Hello, everyone. I'm doing it. We're talking White Sox on this episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome into Sports Talk Chicago. I'm Joey Christopoulos. Follow me at Joey Sports Guy. I got a great show lined up for you with our guest, Nick Murowski. First, let's say hello to our wonderful radio affiliates all across Illinois. We've got to say hello to 98.3 The Life, WKAN, W55 The Ticket, ACTV, JED TV, WJOB, Cities 92.9, Talk FM, and 101.1 Peoria Sports Radio. Thank you so much for carrying today's episode on those wonderful radio affiliate channels. You can follow us on all of your socials at Sports Talk Chi or Sports Talk Chicago. Just Google us. You can also check out the audio-only episode wherever you get your podcasts of Sports Talk Chicago, or please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sports Talk Chicago. Comment and question below. We got a poll question coming up for you. Got a great guest. Nick Murowski from Good Guys Talk Back is going to jump on and talk all things White Sox, because there's a lot to discuss, and it goes beyond just the White Sox being 15 and 40, whatever the number is. Now, to be very fair, I'm taping this on a Wednesday night. As of this moment, the Chicago White Sox have lost 12 games in a row. They currently are beating the Chicago Cubs 5-1 in the fifth inning of the Crosstown Classic, so we'll see what happens. But a lot of news came down about their manager, Pedro Grifol, over the last couple of days. On Wednesday, The Athletic reported, Ken Rosenthal reported, that Pedro Grifol's days may be numbered at some point during this season, and the Chicago White Sox may look to dismiss their manager. Look, this is a dead man walking situation. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Pedro Grifol. Was anyone in a White Sox fandom or anyone across baseball really thought that Pedro Grifol was a top choice for any major league team other than maybe Mrs. Grifol? But now that he's over 70 games under 500, this team is going nowhere. He's lost a bit of control of the locker room. It seems that he might be on his way out. Pedro Grifol did meet the media on Wednesday to talk about those comments. I'm going to read some of the stuff that he just said right here just to get it on the record. Quote, Pedro Grifol, I don't focus on that stuff. It's part of the job. We're not winning, so when you're not winning, speculation is going to get higher and higher. It's part of what we do. We get signed up to win baseball games, and when you don't, there's a possibility of a change being made. I don't make those decisions. I'm certainly not going to worry about it. My concern is making sure that the team is ready to play tonight, make adjustments yesterday, and trying to see if we can snap this awful losing streak that's been no fun and extremely painful. Again, I'm not going to be the one. I'm not going to decide this anyway. I don't make those decisions. Kind of sounds a little bit like when you're running late to work. You know you're going to get written up because you're late for the fifth or sixth time, and you're just sitting in your car and you're saying, you know what? I can only control what I can control. And that's what's going on with Pedro Grifol right now in a season that is completely capsized. We're going to get into it, but obviously my crosshairs are just as focused on general manager Chris Getz for the type of roster that he constructed this year. I get it that this team was built to lose. I understand that this team was built not for today, but for tomorrow, trying to get some younger players up to the big leagues and get some experience. But some injuries to some key guys in the lineup, some underperformance from some dudes that they brought in, like Martin Maldonado in the offseason to possibly raise the IQ level of this baseball team. It simply hasn't happened. And the Chicago White Sox are facing just historically bad numbers across the board. And we're going to get into it with Nick Murowski, but just a couple of them off the top. They're 25 and a half games out of first place. They're dead last in wins, home runs, batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, runs, walks, home runs allowed, second to last in ERA, and also second to last in runs allowed too. So there's a lot to get into with the Chicago White Sox. We are going to try and find some optimism, some rays of light, some rays of positivity. But right now, this is going to be a bit of a venting session. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been holding off on the White Sox for a while. I'm a passionate White Sox fan as much as I am a Cubs fan. And to see what's happening right now to this fan base, and most specifically this organization, when only 2.5 years ago, we were playing a Field of Dreams game, and Tim Anderson was hitting a ball deep into the corn, and we were thinking to ourselves, wow, this window could be open for a White Sox team to not just compete in the AL Central, but compete in the American League and possibly get to a World Series. That feels like 10,000 years ago. And now Pedro Grifol is in charge, and he looks like he's the first person that's going to get the blame on this one. There's already talks of some trade rumors involving Garrett Crochet. I want to get into that with Nick too as well, because I think that's a bad idea. You can trade some of these guys on this team right now for future prospects. I don't think you can trade a 24-year-old Garrett Crochet who's cruising towards an all-star season right now with 2 years of arbitration-eligible years left, a lot of control, a young arm, a guy who's pitching well. Let's see if he can do it in a White Sox uniform for a change. And let's maybe not play this thing like the Miami Marlins and start trading guys year in and year out until we think some of these kids are ready to come up and play. So that being said, let's kick it over right now to my conversation with Good Guys Talkback's Nick Murowski right here on Sports Talk Chicago. Welcome back into Sports Talk Chicago. Joey Christopoulos filling in for John Zaghloul. Make sure you follow me at Joey Sports Guy. So excited to have this guest on here. I've been holding off on talking some White Sox baseball, so who better to bring in my friend of, honestly, we're running on 18, 19 years at this point. He's a returning guest to my show. He's making his first appearance here on Sports Talk Chicago. You can follow him at Nick_GGTB. He's the host of Good Guys Talk Back. It's Nick Murowski. What's up, Nick?
Joey, it's a pleasure, man. It really has been. It's been a while. We've been through a lot, and I love that this medium has kind of brought us back together over the last several years. So great to be with you.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for joining the show. We've seen a lot of iterations of a lot of different White Sox teams. You know, we had a friendship when they hoisted a World Series title, and now here they are. Just time stamping this for everyone. We are taping this on a Wednesday night. At current moment, the Cubs, the White Sox right now are beating the Chicago Cubs 5-3 in the 6th inning. So we shall see what happens if they're going to snap this 12-game losing streak. But I want to open up a peace offering to you, if you will, before the violence starts. Nick, when we talk about the White Sox these days, it's almost like a video game where I get to ask you, which weapon would you like to select before you bludgeon the White Sox? So which weapon would you like to choose to use before we really dig on this embarrassment of a team?
I think you got to use a flamethrower. You know, you might need to use like a double flamethrower, you know, and just burn everything down, just torch it for yards and yards. Anything that you can get your hands on, anything that the flamethrower will touch, just do work.
Classy choice, artistic choice. I'm going to go a little bit more. Straight to the point. I'm going to pull out the sledgehammer here because we do want to talk a little bit about Pedro Grifol. Now, as we're taping this on Wednesday, the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal came out with a report that it looks like Pedro Grifol's days might be numbered. A player in the locker room that spoke anonymously tried to refer to his comments about a week and a half ago about the team looking effing flat as a mode to try and inspire his team, which we all saw in the locker room had kind of a bit of a public rebuke from some of the players in that locker room. We've had some comments come out from Pedro Grifol today. The simple canned stuff of, you know, I don't make those decisions. I can only control what I can control. It's a little bit like this guy right behind me right here, just sort of waiting for the jaws to sink into perhaps Pedro Grifol's tenure with the Chicago White Sox. Do you have an over-under right now? I know the White Sox don't like to dismiss managers in the middle of seasons. What do you first make out of that report from Ken Rosenthal? And let's go there.
Well, you know, I guess I'm not so being a lifelong Sox fan, if he stayed as the manager the rest of the season, I wouldn't be surprised. That's how the White Sox do business. We've seen this type of action from the organization and the owner in all different kind of facets, whether it's GM or other, you know, people that they've kept around way too long. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised, but you know, the stuff that Grifol was talking about was, you know, being flat, and if he was trying to rally the team, he picked the wrong series and the wrong time to do it. I mean, Baltimore's
wrong
a tough
starting
team.
pitcher. Wrong starting pitcher that night too, Nick.
Exactly. And Jim Palmer came out on social media after the game and said to that effect, like, what is Pedro doing here? He's calling out the White Sox for being flat. We ran a really tough pitcher out against the Sox, and the Baltimore Orioles are built for October and beyond. I mean, you know, it's a tough division, but you know, they've got a really good team. So if that was his motive, is to rally them, too little too late. That should have happened a long time ago if he was trying to, you know, get guys amped up. It obviously didn't work as several players bit back. I mean, Corey Lee, Gavin Sheets had kind of interesting takes on, well, I guess if Grifol wants to say that, but we see things, you know, differently. Last week, Grifol went on this huge I think multiple articles praising Jerry Reinsdorf. I'm so fortunate for working with Jerry Reinsdorf. He knows baseball. He's a great evaluator. We talk regularly. I feel like I'm safe and I've got his blessing, so to speak. And I think that was maybe kind of damage control on maybe Pedro's part. Whether that's true or not is just, I'm going to somehow, if I do get axed, maybe an organization will look at me as, I had a good relationship with the owner, or, I tried to, have the owner's back, or whatever that is, because I think for his post White Sox life, it would behoove him to be gone. Like, if you want to manage again, like, save yourself, like, get out now, because it doesn't look good. People thought, like, well, maybe this Cubs series was going to be the last straw. I'd be really surprised. I mean, but then again, they let Hahn and Williams go at the time that they did after the trade deadline last year. And I never thought it would happen within season. So anything's possible. I don't think Pedro Grifol at all is the guy moving forward. And if you think that's the case, even if it's just sliding Montoya over from bench coach to manager right now, just cut the bait with somebody that's not going to be around, because the future is what we're talking about with this White Sox. This season's a lost season.
It's pretty incredible how it looks like whatever Pedro Grifol's message was when he came in and was hired as the White Sox, it's already seemed to have grown stale. And that's a difficult thing to wrap your head around, of when is the right time to possibly dismiss him. They're sitting on a 12-game losing streak right now. It could be at 13 by the time people listen to this episode, or they could have snapped it, but still that turns into a 12-13. It doesn't look good. And the numbers, Nick, they just don't lie. I did it in the first segment, but when you're 25 and a half games out of first place, you're over 70 games below 500 as a White Sox manager. You're dead last in many, many offensive categories right now, several pitching categories, some mostly in the second to last area. You watch this team on a daily basis. You watch every single inning. So how can you pick and parcel and talk a little bit about the hand that he was dealt, which I don't think all of us will agree wasn't great, but the handling on the day-to-day, have you lacked the enthusiasm from Pedro Grifol on the day-to-day, the handling of Corey Lee at times, what they did with Brian Ramos? The day-to-day, does that also deserve a dismissal as much as the larger, broader optics of this organization right now?
Yeah, but you could go to Tuesday night's Cubs Sox game. It was game one of the short series, and how he went with Anderson kind of out of the bullpen right away, even though it was a 5-1 lead maybe at that time after the rain delay. Why Anderson? Like, his bullpen management is really screwy, and how he handles it. The lineup construction is insane. Of course, there's been a ton of different injuries, and guys are absolutely not performing anywhere near we needed them to perform. Benintendi, Andrew Vaughn, on and on. So last year, he came in and it was going to be this breath of fresh air. He's from outside the organization. A lot of people spoke highly of Pedro Grifol. It was a Hahn hire, but if you really, follow things closely, Chris Getz, advocated for Pedro Grifol. They had a relationship in Kansas City. We know how Jerry feels about Chris Getz. So Grifol comes in and he talks the game. We're going to do things different. And they brought a couple other outsiders in, and I didn't really see that at all. It just didn't seem like what he wanted to put in, especially fundamentals, was, practiced last year. Okay, we're going to completely till up the roster. We're going to change things up big time in the offseason. We're going to go with guys that have got some moxie, some TWTW, some guys that have baseball high IQ. They play the game the right way, whatever that means. He created this FAST acronym. We're going to be better. It's going to be a better baseball team, better sound. We're going to be taking bases. We're going to be winning on the margins because they don't have the talent. Okay, we knew that. It's got to be winning on the margins. Where is that? It's just.
It's Duke
mess
Ellis
up
getting
after
picked off at second base on Tuesday is what it is, Nick. And it's stuff like that.
Exactly. And, and you say to Duke Ellis before he goes out there, I know you're amped and I know you're jacked and we told you we want you to swipe 3 if you can, but it's a 1-run game. Okay. With your speed, you're scoring on a blue, we'll send you so just stay somewhere close where you can get back. I want you to be aggressive, but you're also a very critical run here in this scenario. Someone, I don't know whose job that was, or if they gave the message and Ellis was just didn't even hear because he was so, ready to do what he was, born to do pretty much. The dude is lightning quick, but it's the way the Sox have lost games, the meltdowns, the failures, and it clearly there's a message a philosophy that he's tried to put in place that his players just don't respond to, and you're not going to get rid of all of the players. That's the old NFL situation. You're not going to get rid of all your players. The head coach has got to go. The manager in this situation absolutely has to go.
It's a little bit of we're trying as hard as we can, man. A little bit going on with some of the players. I feel like that frustration is bubbling to the surface at times. And we heard that from some players after that effing flat comment. I want to move over to, look, I think Pedro Grifol is going to be in the rearview mirror probably sooner than later. The one that I really want to talk about that I think that could probably do the most damage to this White Sox organization, I fear, is Chris Getz. And I want to get your take on him because we're using a lot of phrases and a lot of derogatory terms to describe this White Sox season. I've heard the word embarrassment a lot this year. For me, Nick, as a White Sox fan, I am insulted. And frankly, I'm offended. And it started in this offseason from the moment when Jerry said we need someone for a quick turnaround that already knows this organization inside and out. From Chris Getz saying that I don't really like this team, to bringing in players that, frankly, look, I mean, Kevin Pillar, Paul DeYoung, Martin Maldonado, these are guys that are rotation depth bench pieces and asked to take bigger roles on this team. This team was constructed to lose. And I just was a little surprised that Chris Getz has turned more into an auctioneer than he has actually turned into someone that's trying to build this franchise back up. How are you viewing his first year on the job? And do you have some reservations about what exactly the plan is for all of this, especially with the season? When you build a team like this, when you build a professional sports team to lose, I don't think you actually realize on paper how bad it can look in reality.
Yeah, I mean, from the moment that he was brought in, it was a big old groan from me. The stomach turned. Here's a guy that did pretty poorly at his previous job, within the organization. And, here we're in this another rebuild that they didn't want to call a rebuild at the beginning. He gets kicked up to GM by Jerry, and Jerry just sang his praises. And what is Chris Getz going to do? He's not going to deny the job. Okay. There's only a few of these out there. So of course he's going to take it. It was insulting. Jerry saying that you're not going to do a true search, because if you bring an outsider in, it's going to take them at least a year to get caught up to speed. If you bring in an expert, someone that has got the experience, that has done this before at a high level with success, they don't need a year. Okay. They know where the growing edges are. They know where the problem areas are. They know what to ignore, what to pay attention to, where to put their focus in. Okay. When you've got somebody that has no idea what they're doing, yeah, it's probably going to take Getz a year plus. And him talking about going to compete in 2024, we should be able to, get back right to it. It shouldn't be a lengthy, rebuild. Again, wasn't using the term at that time. I was a season ticket holder for 7 years, and I did not re-up my season tickets because I said to my rep, I can't take this organization seriously if they're going to retain Grifol without even doing their due diligence. And it's very difficult for me to take them serious if you just kick up Chris Getz. There obviously was also some disconnect between organization and ticket holders, and fans being almost like blamed believe it or not, Jerry blaming fans.
Which is
Can you believe that?
such bullshit, right? Because White
Yeah.
Sox fans not showing up to games is not indicative of their lack of interest or that they don't care about their team. They are calling bullshit on an organization that says, I don't need to give you my dollar if you're not going to put out a competitive team on a year-to-year basis. And maybe some of that residue also of when you're on the doorstep, which feels like 10,000 years ago, Nick, 2.5 years ago, of us being on the doorstep of competing in the American League. You didn't have the balls to push it over the edge. And again, another thing that I find insulting. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's and so you got all this talk of like new stadium, this, that, and the other. There's a new TV station. Like, build a team before you build a stadium or, the next cable, network and everything. So Getz is the guy in charge. And we also, if you paid attention to the offseason, you saw what was going on. It's just fringy guys, 1-year deals, hyping them up on their hustle. And, all that kind of stuff and how prepared they're going to be. And, the depth, because there wasn't a lot of depth. So now we've got outfield depth and all this stuff. I mean, God, it was just absolutely, I couldn't believe some of it. And I would say things to folks and they would say, oh, you're just being, negative. I'm like, I wish. I mean, this is realistic. This is what they're doing here. This is what they're hedging their bets on with these kind of players. And when he brought in Brad Keller and Mike Clevenger with like the thought that they're going to maybe flip those guys at the deadline, are you insane? Like you decided to go back to Mike Clevenger and the excuse of, well, he was our best pitcher last year. It was a 101 loss year. Nobody wanted the guy. Nobody wanted to take a flyer on Mike Clevenger, and you brought him back thinking that you were going to maybe get something out of him at the deadline. I mean, if that's your strategy, just going after guys that you think you're going to be able to flip for something, it's very transparent. So,
well, it's transparent, and it is a move that a lot of general managers do, Nick, across Major League Baseball when they're trying to rebuild. Is you throw darts at a board: Eric Fetty, Flexen, Soroka, Keller, Clevenger, and you're hoping that you can get some type of return from them. We've seen teams do it before. If you're going to lose, I guess that's one way that you could possibly go about it, if you go short term to try and get some sort of return long term back. But then a report comes out, in the same one with Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic, that they're talking to the San Diego Padres about Garrett Crochet. And that's the bridge that, again, I don't understand what the plan is. You have a guy that you drafted 11th overall in the first round of a draft, a homegrown guy who already had his TJ, already had his Tommy John, and now he is cruising towards perhaps his first All-Star appearance in a Chicago White Sox uniform. He's left-handed. He throws over 96 miles an hour, and he has 2 years, 2025 and 2026, of arbitration control. Why the hell are you even entertaining an offer for a guy like Garrett Crochet if you think that this is going to be a 4, 5, 6 year rebuild? How do you make sense of that? Do you make sense of Garrett Crochet being on the block at this time?
The only way I make sense of it is because they have so few assets that will bring back a decent haul. I mean, aside from Crochet and Luis Robert Jr., who really is going to give you these prospects, these chips that you're going to be able to accelerate this rebuild with? Because damn well in the offseason, they're not going to spend money, even though they're going to have money. Okay, we've learned that before. They're not. They're going to hype up their prospects like they did last time. They're going to hype up their farm system. They're going to say, wait till all of these guys hit. And they've already started doing that, highlighting things with AA, what's happening in Birmingham and all of that stuff. So we know the White Sox don't re-sign pitching. We know that. Aside from John Danks, nobody is retained. They've been able to get guys like Chris Sale on an early extension and lock them up. But when it comes to the end of a contract, as we saw with Dylan Cease, again, like, they're not going to pay the money. They just will not. So I'm wondering if it's, hey, look, when we're actually competitive, Crochet is going to be up for contract. We're not going to be able to resign him and retain him. Or this is one of the huge assets that we have. Now, Crochet's on borrowed time innings-wise, so I don't know what a team's not going to get a lot of use out of Crochet this year. I mean, maybe out of the pen here and there, but probably not, as a full-time starter. So this is a long play for a team thinking, hey, in 2025, we're going to have a kick-ass rotation. And can you imagine if we put Crochet in there? So I want the Sox to be purposeful and invest in pitching for this next rebuild. Like, be purposeful with pitching, and I want Crochet to be one of those guys.